that these webinars can have. So we are super excited to have you all joining us again this evening for the last of our spring quarter series for our ECE webinar series. This is hosted by Rasmussen University. First thing is to please connect your audio. If you haven't, I think it looks like everybody has, but do know that if you have any issues with connecting your audio during the session, you can use the quick start link up at the top left corner of your screen and switch from one to the other. You can switch from computer to phone or phone to computer, and if it's just totally as quirky and you're still getting really bad connection or you get booted out, I hope you don't, you can come back in. So you don't, you know, if you have to leave to come back in and kind of reset everything, you can certainly do that. So I want to introduce myself. I am Mary Muhs, and I'm the Department Chair for Early Childhood Education and Human Services here at Rasmussen University. I've been with Rasmussen University going on 11 years this July 5th. And I've really enjoyed working for this university. We are a national program, and our early childhood and human services degrees are fully online, which means you don't ever have to walk into a campus unless you want to, or unless you need to get support or ask questions or need to have a study space. You can do everything from online. We have online support services, 24/7 tech support services, and we have great tutoring and mentoring and an amazing library system with amazing writing center resources, highly credentialed faculty from all over the country, which is really cool to hear from them in their practice as educators in the field at the moment. It's really nice to hear them share that with our students. So if you are interested in any of our degree programs, we do have a website that's got lots of information where you can get that information and you can connect with an admissions advisor to maybe get some of your questions answered. You can also then, we just launched it today, so I didn't even get a chance to change the slide deck. We are having ECE information sessions about our degree programs and all of our program offerings in early childhood education. Those will be on the 3rd Tuesday and the 4th Wednesday of every month, and you can get all that information on our website. If you go to our website here for education, there's a little section there where you can sign up for one of our upcoming information sessions. Get more information, share it with your colleagues if you're a director of a program and you know teachers that need to increase or pursue a higher level of education. It's always good to have all of your options available to you. So just attending will not commit you to anything except for getting some information that you might need to make your best decision. So navigating the WebEx, like I said, you could switch from audio being on computer to audio being by phone. So we have a great group of like everything on the call today, which is really kind of exciting to see so many people using web apps or using their tablets or their phones to connect with the webinar as well. You can ask questions at any time. You can put them into the chat box. That's what we prefer. Just it keeps it easier. We don't have to worry about background noise or interruptions that way for other people who are listening. So we keep you all muted, but we ask you to put your questions in the chat box. That way, if you put all participants in the top at that send to level, that way everyone can see your response. So if you're sharing great ideas, if you're asking good questions, it's likely someone can benefit from those ideas or someone's also got that same question, and we can make sure that we get the most out of our session today. So definitely chat away in the chat box. I love to have people sharing ideas, and I'll be asking enough questions that I hope you'll participate. In-service credit awarded, we do provide 1 hour of in-service credit or clock hours, whatever you want to call it, depending on your state's requirements. You will get a certificate by email within 48 business hours of the session. And we do business hours because we typically try not to work on the weekend. And so just in case there's any technical difficulties in getting these out to you by the end of the day tomorrow, and it likely will be difficult tomorrow because we have our community service day tomorrow, but you still might get it within 48 business hours. So by the end of the night on Monday, you should receive the email with the link to your certificate. And you'll also receive a link to the PDF of the PowerPoint presentation from tonight. So that could help stir up your memories from tonight's session, especially if you are inspired to make some changes or do something new in your program. You do need to participate for the entire session to receive your certificate of participation, and your WebEx classroom does track that, so we do have that available to us. So welcome to our presenter, who happens to be me this evening. I am really excited to talk to you about this subject tonight. And as a department chair for early childhood education, it's something that I've been kind of passionate about for quite some time. So tonight I'm going to do some challenging of your thoughts, your traditions, and hopefully inspire you to think about how you can make some adjustments in your own program, or advocate for others to make adjustments in their program, or both, depending on who you are. So let's look at our system. Our program for tonight is Circle Time DAP, how do calendar, flashcards, and crisscross applesauce fit in. And this is kind of an end of a little series we were doing on developmentally appropriate practices and how they fit in to different components within the early childhood curriculum. And this is kind of, like I said, been a passion of mine for quite some time. And I want to share with you a little bit about my evolution as an early childhood educator. So when I first started in early childhood education, it was way back in 1990, I believe. I was in college and I had started working at a summer day camp, Banner Day Camp actually, up in Lake Forest, Illinois, or around there, I can't quite remember. And I was their drama specialist. And so it was my very first taste of early childhood education. And I also volunteered at my best friend's mom's preschool at the Jewish Community Center in my town, and did a few things that way. And so I started college classes my junior year, second semester in early childhood education. So I was kind of almost done, but I was able to complete my early childhood education hours to receive a minor in child development. And that was a really great accomplishment for me, as my degree was in speech communication, so it was quite a bit different than within the early childhood realm. And so I've always found, both in my college work and in my personal life, I've always found a love for reading, for example, and doing activities with children that brought reading to life. So for me, circle times were like the best because I could take my love of reading, children's books. I did work at Barnes & Noble for a stint, had my paycheck go right to those children's books, but it was a great way for me to practice my skills in reading with groups of children of different ages and different experiences. And so I really loved circle time. When I started working in a toddler classroom, which was my first teaching job in early childhood, it was great. I enjoyed it. I loved singing songs and using puppets and props, felt board stories. I just enjoyed all of the creativity that went in it. And then I started working with a pre-K classroom. This was out in Ohio. My husband, then fiance, and I were living out there. And I worked in this pre-K classroom, and the teacher used a calendar and did calendar time with the pre-K kids, did weather, did all these other things. They had a weather bear and all this kind of stuff. And I remember watching her do it, and she was quite an experienced teacher, but she always seemed to have challenges with the kids, especially when it came to keeping them at the carpet or keeping them at the circle time space. She had all kinds of strategies and techniques that she would use, but it felt like she always spent just as much time doing all of that management as she did and all the preparation than she did actually doing the session with the kids. But she was still a really dynamic teacher, and so, you know, she did the best she could, and then children did fine. So then when I was able to work in as a center director then for a preschool in, or child care center in Illinois, The one thing that I noticed was that not all teachers had that same ability or that capability or even that interest to really devote so much time to trying to create their circle time. But yet they still had all the same parts and components. It was kind of a thing to have a calendar, to have a weather bear or some kind of animal or some mascot for the weather, a puppet maybe, but usually just something on the wall. They had their helper chart. They had all of this stuff in their circle time area. And the children sat for, depending on the teacher and the teacher's excitement and interest and engagement, and the children's excitement and interest and engagement could go anywhere from 10 minutes to 25 minutes. And I just noticed that it was really something that when I'd ask the teachers why they were doing what they were doing, and why they chose to sing that song or why they chose to do that, they never could really answer me, except for this is how we've done it. This is how the teacher that I learned from did it. This is how the teacher in the room next door does it. But yet, they would comment a little bit on how hard it was to keep the kids engaged at circle time. And so it's always been an issue of mine and always been a challenge of mine and always been an interest of mine to figure out how we can transform circle time into a more engaging, a more appropriate and developmentally appropriate time, and how we can look at some of these traditions, and I'm calling it traditions because they're things that we do because we do them, not necessarily always knowing the reason why or the background why. And we do them regardless of the situation or the setting that we're in. It's tradition. It's how we do what we do. And so I've really made it a kind of pet project of mine to really look at these issues and figure out how we can make some changes or adjustments to becoming especially more developmentally appropriate for the children that we're caring for. So I know in this session that I'm going to ruffle a few feathers. I know in this session that there's going to be some of you that will be like, well, no, I don't believe that. This is how it works, and I do it really well, and it works really well for me. And please know that I am not saying that you're doing anything wrong, that you're harming the children, that there's anything bad about what anyone is doing in their circle times. It's a different way of thinking. It's a different approach, and it's something to think about and consider. And really think about, and talk with your co-teachers about the purpose behind what you're doing so that you always know why you're doing what you're doing with our children. So let's move on. So our objectives today is to articulate how a developmentally appropriate practice approach applies to circle time expectations and routines. And then also determine developmentally appropriate routines for circle time. So think about your own program, what you do with the kids. Is it developmentally appropriate for the children in your care? So let's first look at developmentally appropriate practice. So I did a little bit of information literacy no-nos, and I literally copied this from the page for DAP on the NACE website. And let me address a video here. All right. And I'm so sorry, Sharon, that you had issues coming in. It's okay. There's too many different options for joining groups, so I'm glad you're here. So when you look at this statement from developmentally appropriate practice, this was on the definition page, and I really wondered how we could talk about developmentally appropriate practice in the time frame we have here and all the rest of the stuff. And so I decided to focus just on this definition paragraph because I think it really hits home into what I've always been at issue with when it comes to circle times for children. I highlighted a couple of the very important statements that have jumped out to me. And this, just so you know, is from the latest issue of Developmentally Appropriate Practice position statement. And so you'll see some things that are new in here that may or may not have been in there before. It talks about a strengths-based, play-based approach to joyful, engaged learning. And I remember attending a training session on this, and joyful was very intentionally put into this statement. recognizing the multiple assets all children bring. Educators design and implement learning environments to help all children achieve their potential across all domains, recognizes and supports each individual. And I think the most important part is the culturally, linguistically, and ability appropriate for each child. So are there any other things that stand out to you in this developmentally appropriate practice? Or which one of those maybe stands out to you the most in this statement? And you can put your answer into the chat. Or do you just agree with all my highlights? That makes things easier, right? Yeah, Rianne, that joyful, engaged learning. What, we have to make learning joyful? What? I know. Play-based, ability appropriate, yes. Unique individuals, play-based. Yes, they actually said the word play in this statement, right. They are unlikely to retain. You got it, Melissa. You got it. I mean, we're that way too, right? If we're not enjoying what we're reading or what we're listening to, if it's not interesting to us, if we're not able to engage with it and connect it to ourselves, we don't really retain it either, do we? Well, we can't expect a 4-year-old child who's only been around on this world for 4 years to pay attention to something that's not interesting and engaging and joyful for them. Yes. Thank you, Michelle, for agreeing. It is really hard, Donna, to be ability appropriate. It is. We've got such a range of abilities, and that's why we do our best, and we just have to take one day at a time. But keeping that in mind all the time is what we need to do, and it becomes really hard when you're tired and you're busy and all that kind of thing becomes really hard. So that's why I think workshops like this, short and to this and sweet, are good reminders of things that we don't want to forget about. And developmentally appropriate practice is an approach we don't want to forget about. Sometimes it gets neglected amongst other curriculum models that we're trying to follow, and we're trying to hit these standards, and we're trying to do this. But this is the core. This is the foundation. If we do this, all the rest will fall into place. It will, absolutely. But we have to do this. And so that's where I wanted to start with this. Thinking about developmentally appropriate practice, think about this statement as we talk about some of these challenges with circle time. My mouse is just happy. So what is circle time to you? What is circle time? We probably call it a million things, right? What is circle time to you or to your program? Large group? Yep. Yep. Checking in and stories, a quick introduction to the day's plans, a morning meeting. I've heard that being used a lot. Story time or music time, group time, calendar, bonding, checking in. I love bonding, Lorianne. I love that. A gathering time for social learning and getting to know one another on a deeper level. Wow, Michelle, that's kind of profound. I love that. Usually ends in a dance party. Now that's joyful. Anna, that is joyful. I love it. It means a lot of different things to us. It depends on where we come from. It depends on what our states require of us, our programs ask of us, what our children want from us or desire to do. And it depends on who we are and our comfort level too. And so it's an important time for our children. And one of you'll see this picture is from teachpreschool.org. She's one of my favorite bloggers on preschool programming. And you will have a link to some of her stuff at the end of the presentation that'll be in the PowerPoint for you. But you'll notice here this little group, right? It is a smaller group, it looks like, right? I mean, at least as far as what we can see in the picture, right? So it's, 7, 8 children. I don't know if there's more beyond the picture image. But she's down on their level. She's sitting on the floor with them. There is a big flannel board or maybe dry erase board against the wall that you can see. You can see that she has a tray in front of her with some little discs on it, and it looks like maybe a graphing type activity to do with them. The children are all real close up to her. This is a group time, a circle time, a gathering time, a meeting. And this is how it looks in this preschool program. It's going to look different in every preschool program. But the one thing that I find a lot about Teach Preschool is that she appreciates everybody's differences and uniqueness in all programs. But then she tries to provide us with some common things that should be present in all circle times, for example, or in all types of literacy activities, or in all types of outdoor play, so that we can kind of have some common ground, and it's all based on developmentally appropriate practices approach. So the one thing that she does do is that she does try to fill the space between tradition and new knowledge. And this is a battle that we deal with a lot in early childhood education. Well, that's how we've always done things. That's how we used to do things 30 years ago. And we still do that now. But does our new knowledge and our new research and our new practices fit with that? And if it doesn't fit with that, why? And if it does fit with that, then we should continue to do it. But if it doesn't fit with that, then we might need to rethink how we do things. And it doesn't mean, like I said, that what we were doing was bad, because it was the research-based approach to begin with, but we've learned new things. And that's the beauty of lifelong learning, is that you can learn new things, move forward, make changes, and still continue to learn new things, move forward, and make changes. We concentrate on engagement. We called it a family meeting. I love that. Oh, Sharon, that sounds like a wonderful practice and a good way to accommodate during this past year's crazy distance learning. Distance learning for preschools, oh my goodness. That's an interesting subject to talk about all day. Whoops, I just realized this totally. Okay, there we go. The other thing that you'll notice when I start talking and sharing a little bit about what are some common things we want to look for in a developmentally appropriate circle time is that there's a continuum of practice. We know there are things that are developmentally inappropriate. And the real extreme things, that would maybe be corporal punishment, things like that. There's also the really developmentally appropriate things that are on the high end of the DAP model, that show you, if developmentally appropriate practices was a visual, it would be exactly that. And then everything in between. And there's all shades of developmentally appropriate practice. Now, some of it is appropriate because of the people and the children that we're working with and the families that we're working with and our expectations and the needs of the families and the children that we're working with. Remember, developmentally appropriate practice is individual children, individual families, really trying to capitalize on those strengths that those families and children have. And that's going to vary greatly, right? So there's no one right way to do this. There's also no one right path to do it in. I mean, you could connect these stars in kind of a haphazard little pattern here to get from developmentally inappropriate to developmentally appropriate. And we, as practitioners in early childhood education, are going to be all over the map when it comes to this, and probably all over the map with different things in your current program. You might be all over the map and say that I am extremely developmentally appropriate in this one area, but I got a lot of work to do about developmentally appropriate practice in another area. So just realize, like I said, this is a time to just think differently and look at things with a different lens to allow yourself to maybe make some adjustments or think about how developmentally appropriate your program is for the children in your care. So circle time in a developmentally appropriate way would include at least these 9 aspects. It would create community. I know some of you put that in there, and I remember, I think Lori Ann, you had put bonding time. And that's what it is. It should be time to chat, time to talk. Kind of like you're having a little coffee circle and you're all sitting around drinking your coffee and chatting with your friends. Same idea. It should be a chance for the kids to communicate and talk together where all children are valued. And it should be interactive between the children and with the educator so that it is something that the children are consistently engaged. It's not a hands-on or hands-in-lap situation. It's a hands-on situation. And that will keep them engaged and a part of what's going on. It should include music and movement. You should almost never get a group of children together and not do something with music and movement. First of all, it is a love of children. It also does so much developmentally, and it's something that brings that group together. It should include storytelling and read-alouds, storytelling with and without books, and read-alouds with books. And it should be highly visual. That means if you're doing brainstorming, you should be writing lists down. If you are reading a story, you should have the book, but you could also have a flannel board story. Or you could be singing a song and you could have hand puppets or stick puppets to go along with it. It should be responsive and flexible. That means that today may be a rough day. Maybe it's the first day back from everyone being at home from the pandemic. Well, of course, that first day back is not going to necessarily be your model circle time, and it shouldn't need to be. You need to be responsive to the children and their needs that day, and flexible enough to say, we've lost everybody, time to move on to the next activity, even if it's 10 minutes early. It's routine and comfortable, so it should be something that the children know when you call or you make that indication that circle time is beginning, that they know what to expect, that they're ready and they're excited to come over to join you. And it should be a way to build self-confidence in the kids. And by encouraging them and having it be highly interactive and participatory, no one gets left behind. So let's look at some of the key things that maybe makes circle time, or the key common questions, how about that, that people have when it comes to circle time. The first one is, how long is circle time supposed to be? So let me throw out a question to you. If you had a group of toddlers between the ages of, so maybe 15 months, let's stick with a nice number, 15 months. How long should a 15-month-old, a group of 15-month-olds, maybe a little bit older, a little bit younger, how long should that circle time be? 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes, you probably already barely sit them down after 3 minutes. A couple of minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, 2 minutes. 1 minute per age, right? Per year of age, right? So 1 minute. By the time they sit down, they're done with circle time. That goes that fast, right? Start with 5 and build from there. It's a good recommendation, Chanel. Okay, how about a preschooler who's 4? How long should circle time be for a preschooler who is 4? 20 minutes, Selena says. 10 to 15, no more than 20. So it does jump up a little bit. Melissa, ding, 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 ding. Lorianne, ding, ding, ding. There is no one answer to this question. Now, you might have state regulations that say that it can't be longer than blank. That's fine. However, the rule of thumb is this: as long as it needs to be. As long as it needs to be. I know toddlers that can sing and dance and listen to stories for a half an hour. They are fully engaged, they are participating, and they are excited and, yes, joyful. I know preschoolers that can't last 10 minutes. As long as it needs to be. Okay, so if you have children that are telling you, as Melissa says, if they're telling you after 5 minutes and you've got preschoolers and you're like, man, I got a lot left on my list of things to do for circle time today, and those kids are just antsy, right? They're not paying attention. You're having to redirect more than you're having to do any of your facilitation of the group. It's time to be done. Don't make yourself suffer and the children suffer through something that they are not getting anything out of. They have already disengaged from the activity, and they are not going to get anything out of it. Even if you brought them back to the group, it likely wouldn't last very long because they've already moved on to the next thing. So think about that. As long as they're engaged, and engaged means looking at you without having you to tell them to look at you, or to look at the activity, or to ask questions, or to participate. If you're having to do popcorn and you're spending more time talking to the children about attending to the group and don't touch your friends and all this kind of stuff, you're probably, there's something wrong there. There's something that you need to look at. Either the group time is already too long, it might be at the wrong time of day, it might be not interesting enough for the kids, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So, whoops. So crisscross applesauce. Where did this come from? Does anyone know? I know it is in place of a inappropriate terminology that we used to use when I was a little one, which was sit Indian style. We know that that is not appropriate, and that's very derogatory towards the Native American indigenous populations. So we no longer use that. Hopefully you do not. If you do, it's likely because that's what you did when you were younger. So you just have to keep switching your brain and say, brain, that's not appropriate, call it something new. But why pretzel legs? That's a different one. I have not heard that one, Pat. That's funny. It would make me hungry all the time. So crisscross applesauce. So what is crisscross applesauce? Why do we have crisscross applesauce? Or pretzel legs? Why do we have pretzel legs? Any thoughts? I did not look up the history of it. I could have probably. I could have. My guess is it's to keep the children from touching one another, right? To make space for the kids to be able to sit and see, and to have somewhere to put their hands in their lap, right? But what ends up happening with our children when we focus on keeping their hands in their lap and their crisscrossed applesauce? Oh, Joyce, love that answer. The expectation is, yes, they're going to sit there, right? They're going to sit like we told them to, and they're going to crisscross their applesauce, and they're going to pretzel their legs, and they're going to put their hands in their laps, and they're going to listen, and they're going to watch me, and everything's going to be perfect, right? But yes, Stephanie and Joyce, they wiggle. Children must move. They are active learners. Okay, active listeners. So sitting still is almost impossible for a child. Okay, almost impossible. Yes, Katie, that's perfect. They spend more time trying to figure out which spot they're going to sit on, which letter they're going to sit on, who they're going to sit next to, or how to keep my legs still, how to keep my hands still. It becomes a challenge. And yes, Ovidia, I do agree. It is a crossing the midline type of thing, but there are definitely other ways we can do that. But the things to remember is developmentally, children cannot concentrate if they are uncomfortable. We can't, right? Like I said before, we are adults. We can't concentrate if we are uncomfortable. Neither can they. And they are active learners and active listeners. So sitting still is like impossible for them for very long. Even the kids that do sit crisscross applesauce or pretzel legs, it doesn't last a really long time. And they're very tempted by the kids that don't. So instead, think about how you can encourage children to sit how they need to sit. So you can kind of see in this picture, the words kind of took off a little bit, but you can see our three friends all the way to the right. So we have the young girl in red, the young girl in pink, and the young boy, I believe a boy, in green shirt. So that's how we'll label them at the moment. So the child in the, we'll do it this way, the child in the red shirt has her legs stretched out. She's leaning on her arms. It's obviously a comfortable position for her, and guess what? She's engaged, okay? The other little one in the pink jacket or pink sweater is sitting with legs crisscrossed and her hands kind of in her lap, kind of bracing her ankles there, holding on. And she's also engaged. And you know what? The child in the back as well. The child in the green shirt is also engaged, although likely sitting up on the knees so that they can see over the other children. So it actually is so much harder, Melissa, because you are having to police the children versus just letting them figure it out. Now, I know that you're thinking, well, they're going to be touching each other. So what? Maybe two children want to hold hands during group time. Maybe they want to sit next to their best friend that they like to play with, and they want to sit shoulder to shoulder. Maybe they have, they're doing growing pains, and so their knees, need to be straight out because it just feels better. Or maybe, that they need to stand up and bounce a little to be able to learn because it just keeps them focused. Sometimes we need to make that exception for our children. And the most successful group times / circle times that I have seen done do not even worry about how the children sit. They sit close to you. They sit in the way that feels comfortable to them. Some children will sit in a chair. Some children will sit on the floor. Somebody might sit with a lap blanket over them because they need that pressure and that weight. Some children sit with a fidget. Some children, lay down on their stomachs and watch you. Some children sit with their legs out. It's a battle, yes, Melissa, that you won't win. So instead, give them a little bit of that flexibility. You may find that you have less policing to do for the children. Whoops, this keeps bouncing ahead. So let's talk calendar. And this is probably like the hottest topic out there in the early childhood world and has been. And I think it's going to get even hotter because it's something that ended up to be there's been quite a resurgence in calendar in the past year due to COVID and our online learning. And because it's an easy thing to put on video. It's an easy thing to have on the wall. You can show kids the numbers and everyone can chant with you and that sort of thing. With COVID, and Caroline, that was, keeping them apart is like, it's like herding cats, right? It's not going to happen. Just lots of hand washing, lots and lots of hand washing. Masks help if they can wear them or if they're supposed to wear them. But kids are kids. They're physical beings, and they need each other's touch to keep going. So with calendars, we've seen kind of a resurgence. We've seen kind of a resurgence in a lot of things that are not necessarily developmentally appropriate. Part of it's out of necessity, totally get it. Part of it is out of what makes it easier for us as educators doing this online. And part of it has become a new expectation that I think in early childhood education we're going to have to do a little pushback for if we really focus on developmentally appropriate approaches to circle time and those activities that surround it. So our activity here, to calendar or not to calendar. So this is where I'm really going to challenge you. Why do you do calendar time? And I'm hoping I'm just talking to preschool and up. I'm hoping we're not working with calendars with younger children, but why do you do calendar time? I'd love to hear what you think. Oh, Donna, thank you. We'll talk about some alternatives here in a second. They can learn numbers and math. Oh, because you have such an age range, Shelley. Yep. To have a sense of time. So I'm so happy to hear a bunch of you don't do calendar. It could be number recognition, letter recognition, part of morning meetings, sequencing patterns. Okay. Talk about weather, what to wear for the day. I see so many of you that do not do calendar. So when we start talking in a few minutes about options, I'd love to hear what you do. I'd love for you to share so that those people that do it can see options. And you're kind of told to, Anna. That is very interesting. Question of the day. Love questions of the day. Some of these kids could talk forever about a question of the day. So let's look here at some of the challenges with calendar time. So the research that I did on this has been over time, my personal research as well as other articles and books that I've read over the years about challenges to calendar time and why calendar time may not be developmentally appropriate. And actually, most people say it is not developmentally appropriate for children under the age of 5, for sure, but should really be even for kids that are in kindergarten, first grade for sure, or not till kindergarten, first grade for sure. And the biggest thing is their development. They're not developmentally ready for understanding the temporal understanding that's needed to do calendar time for the real purpose. Now, I see a lot of you are putting other purposes, and we'll talk about those in a second. But if we're looking at calendar for what it truly is, that it's a calendar and we're talking about the days of the week, I know there's lots of quirky little songs that go with days of the week, but children at this age do not understand that time is sequential. They do not understand before and after, today, yesterday, and tomorrow. They don't get those concepts. They might be able to talk to you about things they did before or things they did after, but they don't really understand those concepts in a nutshell. And that makes it really challenging for calendar time. It becomes a rote memory activity instead of having any meaning to the children's day. They also don't understand lengths of time. And that's that old thing, you know, like you tell them, we'll be there in 10 minutes or we'll be there in 2 hours. They don't understand. 10 minutes, 2 hours, all the same thing. That's why they always ask when you're in car rides, are we there yet? When is my mom coming? They could ask you that 10 times in an hour because you will say in an hour, but they don't understand that. Yep, think back to theory, Melissa. Absolutely. This is not the time for them to think about it. And what did we talk about before? If it's not interesting to them, if it's not tied to their experience, if it's not something that means something to them, they could care less. And thus they will not either engage with the activity or they will get nothing out of it. And it becomes a rote memorization thing. That little song, Days of the Week, and everybody sings it. Fine song, but they're just remembering it because they remember the song. They may not be able to tie it to a specific day of the week or a specific order of the days of the week. And they really don't start to get this until they're around first grade, probably ages 7 to 10. Okay, that's where they're really going to start absorbing that and tying it to their experience, which then means something to them. Now we talk about some possible benefits. That, yes, numeracy, learning to recognize and count numbers, absolutely. One-to-one correspondence, yep, those are things. Colors and patterns, patterning, you know, because you've made all the cute little calendar icons that are in different patterns. And memorization, right? But they do need to memorize things and remember things, so it will help, right? But aren't there better and more developmentally appropriate methods for teaching these concepts where children are actively engaged? Think about it. If you have a group of 20 preschoolers and you're all sitting down for group time, I also think that's too many preschoolers to sit down at group time, but we do it. So we put them at group time and one child is up there with their little wand and they're counting out the days while the other kids sit on the floor and sing a song. Or maybe they jump up and down and dance the song, but one child is doing the action on the board. It becomes less engaging than you think it is. Less engaging than you think it is. So what I want you to think about is instead, okay, if I'm using calendar because I'm doing colors and patterns and recognizing numbers, what are other activities that can be done at small group at the tables, can be done during playtime, can be done one-on-one with kids or in other small groups on the carpet? What can be done at other times that are more engaging for children where they're manipulating materials and talking and working with each other? Because there are tons of them, tons of them. Now, if your company, and I'm sad to say that, Rebecca, if your company requires it, I know a lot of times we think that it's a way for parents to see that we're teaching them something. But instead, there's so many other ways to document what they're learning and where they're learning these concepts than through calendar. Because I would bet you there's very few children that if you were then to ask outside of calendar time, maybe parents come at the end of the day and they say, what day of the week is it today? Most children can't tell you what it is. Or if you ask them, what's the day of the week tomorrow? They can't tell you. They'll tell you what they're doing tomorrow, maybe, if they remember, or they'll tell you what they're going to do on another day without knowing that it's tomorrow. But knowing the exact calendar as the way it is really tough for children at this age. So I know I've probably rattled a few brains. Maybe I have confirmed a few things for people. And maybe it's something that you can take back to your center director or your program and say, why do we do calendar? What is our purpose? And see if you can find a different way to fulfill that purpose. Now, flashcards are another thing that have become quite popular in the COVID world because they're easy to put on screen. They're easy for kids to manipulate and for parents to use and that sort of thing. And flashcards is something, if I mention it and in some of our instructor meetings and such, most of the instructors are like, oh no, no flashcards. Because we know the purpose behind them is memorization, which is great, but there are other ways for children to use memorization skills in a way that is more meaningful to them and allows them to be more directly engaged. So let's look at, oh my goodness, let's look at a couple of things about flashcards. Do any of you use flashcards in your program? Chanel says no. I love hearing that you don't. And some might. I saw some of you no, 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 no. Some say yes. And like I said, I'm not saying that you're doing things that are harming our children, okay? The fact that you're engaging with them and trying to talk to them and getting them to talk with you, that is number one, okay? But there are better ways to get those same concepts and those same skills with children, okay, that allows them to have meaning to what they're doing. So flashcards, for example, that have any kinds of illustrations on them really don't do a whole lot for kids because this is not how a real chicken looks. It might be how I draw a chicken, but it's not how a real chicken looks. Ducks are typically not fully green. And dogs might look somewhat like that, but likely it doesn't look like their dog, so it doesn't mean the same thing to them. And depending on their age, they're going to have a hard time categorizing these. So take a look at real photos, okay? If you're going to show children pictures of anything, it should be real photos. So have a real photo of a real duck that you took on a walk with your family. A real duck. Maybe it's the child takes a photo of a duck they saw on a walk with their family and bring in. It could be things in your immediate environment. So if you're talking about you're trying to do colors. Let's do it this way. You're trying to do colors, and you have these nice little flashcards that have squares of colors or shapes that are different colors, and you're talking about the shapes and the colors. Instead of saying that this is a red bird, have a red bird puppet in front of you. Have a picture of a real cardinal, a photo of a real cardinal in front of you, so they can see it. Maybe even a video, a short video of a real cardinal at a bird feeder. That would be better too. Anything that's real and connected to them is going to be more supportive. And I talk about real items and real items. So real items like those stuffed animals like I mentioned, or real, like if you've got different types of I hate plastic food, but if you have plastic food, see if you can have the plastic food and then real food, like the plastic spaghetti and a real bowl of spaghetti. They can see what spaghetti really looks like. And really, truly, honestly, you should have things that are only referencing things that are immediately available to them in real life. So I remember being a part of an observation that I was doing of a program. I was observing a student who was assisting in the classroom. And so the lead teacher of the classroom was doing the group time, and they were talking about Arctic animals. Now, I know we're in Minnesota. I get it. It's cold here. But we don't have narwhals. We don't have any whales. We don't have polar bears here. And Arctic animals was very foreign to these kids. They had no clue. It was not any relation to them. What would have been better for them is pets. Or what would have been better for them are animals in our neighborhood. Or what would have been better for them are even animals that they can go see at the zoo. They can't see a narwhal, they can't see a whale, and at the Minnesota Zoo, they don't have a polar bear at the moment. So they do at the other zoo, but not at the Minnesota Zoo. So it's really foreign to them. So things that should be real to the children, and it reminds you then that you should have real photos of these real things, no matter what, so that they're seeing reality versus fantasy. Yeah, they do not allow for active manipulation. Oh, so good to say that, Joyce. Three-dimensional objects, real things, props are a big deal. So these are a lot of things to think about. You might be thinking, oh, gosh, I do this. I know we have to think about how to do it differently. So let's look at a couple of things that you can do to help think through some of these problems. So best practices for engagement. If you're having issues with engaging your children during circle time, and you are having issues with keeping them in circle time for any length of time to talk about anything, try creating smaller circle or group times throughout the schedule of the day. So instead of having one group time in the morning or right before lunch, have smaller, shorter ones where you and your co-teachers each take a group of children. And you have two small groups of 10 children, or if you've got preschoolers, and you're each on opposite sides of the room, and you're doing two things, maybe the same thing, or maybe two different things, and then switch later. Have smaller opportunities. Have story time at this time, have music time at this time, have your question of the day at this time, so that it's little snippets throughout the day that are shorter, less overwhelming, and that can be more interactive. And allow that flexibility with the length of the activity. Realize that this is your plan, but your plan is not up to you. It's up to them. And if they're engaged and interested in it, you might be able to do it longer than you would have planned initially. I encourage you to sit down on the children's level. We talk about eye contact with DAP. We talk about it if you're NACE accredited. Eye contact is a huge thing, getting on their level. So why do we sit in a chair with the children down low? I was going to put a picture in here of some things I found. I found some great examples and some not so great examples online of how to have children in group time. And one of them, the teacher was sitting in this chair, and the children were sitting on the rug, and the rug was huge. So it was there were like 20 shapes around the outside of this big oval rug. It was massive, and the teacher probably had to shout from one side of the room to the other to catch the child way on the other side. I will tell you, those children probably never were engaged because they were too far away from the action. They were too far away from the people that they wanted to be close to, and it was just going to be a nightmare. So sit on their level, get them close to you, get them so that they can see each other, smile at each other, laugh with each other, talk and ask questions. And let them sit comfortably. I really encourage you to do so. You can see this little group at the top is like probably a parent-child type of an event, and the children are just kind of sitting wherever, which I love. The one in the middle just cracks me up because half the kids, well, four of them at least, are laying on their bellies watching the activity happen. There's no special spot. They're not sitting on a special animal. They're sitting how they want to sit, and I love that. And then the one on the bottom is just they're close together. It's a little community. It's a little way for them to interact. See the pictures. There shouldn't be any issue with seeing. And the teacher should be able to talk in a normal voice and have conversations with the kids. Best practices for engagement when it comes to the calendar type activities that children want to do. And I am giving you the Teach Preschool link to some of her resources at the end of this presentation. And I highly encourage you to go there and watch some videos that she has and see what she does. She's got great examples. Physical and visual charts are ways that you can make learning visible. So if you're worried about what parents think, this is a great way to show them what they're learning. You can see on the left, there's an actual interactive physical chart that the children put together. Who is here today and who's at home today? They have those little wooden cookies with their names on them. And so the kids, when they come to the group, they can put their name in the right one, whether they're here today, obviously, and if they're at home, then their cookie wouldn't move. And then they're able to talk through all of their names. They're able to witness all of their names. They're able to choose it, and they talk about who's here today and maybe where people are at and who may not be here tomorrow, that kind of thing. It's an informal way of talking about time without a calendar. Then you can see also the Do You Use Books chart. That's a chart that kids can participate in and talk about when they are in group time. And like I said, it's a visual way of showing learning happening. And then also personal and visual calendars. So if you're looking at you know, a schedule, or you need to talk about what's happening that day, personal schedules or personal calendars can be really helpful. So a lot of people put up visual schedules, and where they have photos of the kids in their program or photos of children or photos of activities, and along with the time of day, and it's usually in order, sometimes vertical, sometimes horizontal. And then they could do, you know, where they could go across and they can see, oh, this is what we just did. This is what we're doing next. It's a great calendar or schedule type of an event. You can do something similar with a calendar. You can do it what we did today, what we're doing today. Here's today's schedule, all visual with pictures. These are the things we're doing today. Tomorrow we're going to do these things. Might be exactly the same thing, or it might be tomorrow you're having a puppet show coming, or you're having a parent guest reader coming, or tomorrow's picture day, and you have some other icons, but they're visuals, they're photos, hopefully, so that the children can see yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But that's it. You don't talk about next Tuesday, you don't talk about the end of the month, you don't even worry about that because they can't grasp that, even though they might be able to grasp today, yesterday, and tomorrow a little bit, especially if it's visual. Now, this is a video that'll be linked in the PowerPoint that I want you to take a look at. This is the owner of Teaching 2s and 3s, and this is another website that I really love, another blog. She's got great videos online too, some things that she's adapted for the virtual world, as well as doing them in her preschool that she teaches in, or her program that she teaches in, where she teaches children that are 2 and 3. So it's a young program, toddler type age group. And best practices for engagement here that she talks about are using puppets and props to keep attention and to keep children interested and engaged. Having your materials, of course, ready at the beginning of group time. So you are not fussing around trying to find that book in the middle of group time and the children are then gone. Flannel board stories, and she's got a really great way to use finger puppets and things of that nature that you can make very easily and not have to purchase, which we don't want to always have to do. And then the importance of music and movement in your activities as well. So it's important to remember that they should be engaging and joyful, and these are things that bring joy to young children. So one of the first things you can do is you can go back to your group time in your program, in your classroom, your group of children, your family child care, or to those that you work with. Maybe you are a coach, maybe you are a center director, maybe you are, you know, just thinking about the assistant teacher you work with in your program right now and how she or he can do differently with group time. Think about this one question. Are these activities joyful for the children? Are these activities joyful for the children? And are they enjoying it? Because if you look at the group of children and most of your children are not actively engaged without you telling them to be, if they're not interested, paying attention, interacting, their eyes aren't lit up, then there's things that you can change about your group time. And Rayanne, I sure hope so, because it really saddens me that even though research told us at least last summer that things that you touched and things like that weren't necessarily contagious, like we thought they were at the beginning of the pandemic, where we were sanitizing everything that everybody touched all the time. It's really saddening to me to know that there's been programs that have been open this whole time, and teachers couldn't even use the puppets. Teachers couldn't even use felt board stories, whether the children touched them or not, that the teachers couldn't do it. There were teachers telling me that they couldn't do dancing in the program because the children might sing. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we lost so much because we were so misinformed. And so I would encourage you to do research, talk to your center directors, your owners, your programs, ask questions. One, if you're under more pandemic restrictions in the fall, I really hope we don't go backwards. Really ask why. Think about how you can do things differently so that you don't miss out and the children don't miss out on things. But always ask why. So if your directors and your owners are telling you you need to do this certain thing, ask why. Why is it developmentally appropriate for me to do this? My children are 2. They don't understand time. They don't understand calendars. They won't understand calendars. So why are we doing one? I'd rather teach them these concepts and really help to rethink how we do circle time with our children, group time, gathering time, meeting time, what have you. Really think about it. There's some great resources here that will come in your PowerPoint, so I hope you'll check them out. And there's many, many more out there. These were just some that I found that I really appreciated as I was putting this together. And they're pretty reliable and credible sources. So I hope you share them and use them as you need to. So thank you so much for coming. I hope I inspired you a little bit. Hope I didn't make anybody mad. You can tell that this is something I really feel is important for us, and it's something that I think that we can all look to making changes for, because this is a really important time of day for our children. It's our community time, and Lord knows we need to have more community in our programs right now, and this is a good time of day to make that happen. So thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate you all. There will be new sessions coming up for the summer quarter, and you all should get information about this in your email. The next one won't be until July. I think it's July 10th, I think. July 8th is the next one. And it will, I didn't even check to see what it'll be on, I can't remember, but they are all on different areas of curriculum. So I think we have one on blocks, one on art, and one, oh goodness, I think sensory, but I can't remember. So hopefully you'll get a chance to come and share some ideas and learn some new things at the process. So thank you guys so much. I appreciate you and have a great evening. Yes, enjoy the summer, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you in July and August for our webinars, but if not, I totally understand. Take some time away for yourself and stay cool.